Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I've got another fantastic B2B e-commerce focused episode lined up for you today. Before I introduce our guest for the day, I just want to encourage you to go to your podcast platform of choice, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It really does help with our rankings within all of these podcast platforms, including YouTube. So go over to YouTube and follow us and subscribe. And we really appreciate that. It makes a massive difference in helping this content get out to a much wider audience. Now, having said that, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Evihn VASZILY from Illumina to the pod. Welcome, Evihn.
Thank you so much. Great. Glad to be here.
Mate, it's so cool to have you along for the ride today. And the way that I found out about you was through the speaker list for B2B Online Florida, which I'm going to be the day one chair for the conversation we're going to have in Florida. And I was like, man, I'd love to get Evihn on the podcast because I think some of the things he's doing, especially in the life sciences space around B2B e-commerce, B2B marketing. Look, these are challenges I think that many B2B brands are facing, especially where they are older, more legacy, family brands in many cases. They're maybe 25, 50, 75, 100-year-old brands, and they're trying to stay relevant in a digital world. And that is something that many of these brands are really struggling with. And because you came, at least as far as I can tell, you've come from the agency background, the agency world, you've built agencies and you've worked inside the agency world. Now you've gone brand side and you've taken all that experience, that beautiful agency experience similar to me. And now I've taken that into a consulting direction. You've taken that in the brand direction, and it feels like you feel right at home in the B2B and life sciences space now.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think in the case of Illumina, it's definitely been around for some time. I mean, we're talking, 25 years plus at this stage. So yeah, some things within the company are definitely still a little bit legacy. And so there's definitely, I think over the course of the past 5 years plus now, still ongoing, a digital transformation that's happening there. And so, yeah, I think, just looking back a little bit, like you said, coming from an agency background and having transitioned to the life science space, now maybe 7 years ago at this point, yeah, definitely, there's a lot to take into this space. And there's a lot of things that have already been switched over. But I think, especially for a brand like Illumina that's been historically product focused, product driven, very much, especially because it's a market share leader, front and center in a place where a lot of the work as far as awareness has already been done. It's about taking that and bringing it into the 21st century and really making the digital part of the experience, the front of shop, and kind of taking into account as the first thing that customers experience, making that ultimately what represents the brand. So that's still in progress.
And I think that the life sciences industry has some unique challenges from a B2B e-commerce perspective because, first of all, the products are complex. You're creating biological components.
Mm-hmm.
You're creating biological building blocks. You're creating reagents. You're creating products that are then used oftentimes in a laboratory to do what researchers need to do, and also biological producers need to have the base building block material that they need to have to do their jobs. And so oftentimes you're selling into university labs, you're selling into very large pharma businesses, you're selling into these situations where oftentimes the researcher has maybe gotten a grant and now they need to be able to buy the base products they need to be able to deliver on the research project that they've gotten the grant for. So there's a really unique buying process, and the buyer that you've got on the buying side, it's not just your traditional, okay, here's the PO, I'm sending it across, but there is this complexity in the purchasing process and in the buying cohort that you're selling to. That means that the experience you have to craft digitally for them is quite unique versus your traditional, I'm selling pumps to an industrial distributor. It's a totally different world in the life sciences world in terms of, first of all, the sheer number of variants you can have in your world, and Mike, because I've consulted to some life sciences businesses before, the sheer number of variants of products and the make on demand element of the life sciences business, or at least just in time making these products because they have a life cycle to them, that they are, in many cases, they're fragile items that need to be protected biologically in transit, et cetera, et cetera. So the life sciences space just has some super unique complexities to it, both on the production side, the presentation of the data side, so that people are buying the right products when they come to your website and they're able to facet and filter down to the right products really quickly. And then also on the purchasing process side, there's a lot of complexity in that too. And it feels like this is just a totally unique beast in the world of B2B.
Yes, 100%. The front door looks different, first of all. We can't sell to just anybody to start off with. You need to be the right sort of customer to even buy from us to begin with. It's an incredibly heavily regulated environment. There's a vetting process that has to happen before the conversation can even start there. Assuming it does, to your point, yeah, there's so many different configurations of these products that are possible, and a big part of the e-commerce aspect of it has to be something that allows them to do that, and something that has enough complexity both on the front end and the back end to allow us to design a configurable product. But yeah, like you said, it's also the process of getting to that point too, right? I mean, it's the education that has to happen up front to let them know that this is in fact the right product, and not just the right product, but the best product to solve whatever issue, whatever product it is that they're trying to, or whatever problem it is that they're trying to solve. So yeah, there's definitely a ton of complexity even to getting to that step. And then even so, with many life science companies, Illumina and other ones included, there's just a really wide breadth of products there as well. It's a massive catalog. And the sales process with marketing, of course, at the forefront there to even get to that stage can be anything from driving them to a more consumable product. It could be something quick where they need something right away. They're trying to get it as quickly as possible. It's just one and done. They go in, they order what they need from the e-commerce experience. Or it could be a more drawn out sales process where maybe the website is a front door. Again, it's where they're going, they're getting all the information. There's kind of these multiple touch points happening along the way, but then ultimately it leads to conversations and more information down the line. And if you've got a customer that's purchasing an instrument, for example, that can be a 6-month sales cycle there. Yeah, there's just such a wide breadth of different experiences, even within a single life science company, that customers could take depending on, again, what it is they're looking for, the type of customer they are, and where they're at in their R&D process. So 100%.
Well, and even the fulfillment side of the business is totally unique, because now we're talking biological components. We're talking genes, we're talking reagents, we're talking the, as you say, very heavily regulated biological material that has to be oftentimes transported under refrigeration or frozen transport, fragile transport. And so it's not like you can just pop down to the local UPS or the local USPS office and pop it in a carton and pop it over the counter and slap a label on it and off it goes. You have to deal with specialized carriers with specialized permits and authorizations to transport biological material and have life cycle tracking along the entire, from the point that it leaves your lab to the point that it arrives in, say, a university lab or something like that. You've got to track that end to end. It's oftentimes the products are effectively serialized batches and lots, to that way if something were to happen, they can track down, okay, which lot, which batch did this come from. So you've got, just from a logistical and fulfillment standpoint, you've got a whole bunch of unique challenges that you have to deal with as a business that your traditional B2B manufacturer or distributor just doesn't even have to think about.
Just doesn't. Exactly. Yeah, there's that. There's controlling the environment also, depending on what kind of samples, what kind of cultures, what kind of library prep reagents, whatever it is,
etc.
Where you're sending. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, depending on what it is, you might have to keep it at a certain temperature. There might be constraints where you have to send it on dry ice, for example. You have to send it refrigerated shipping arrangement. So yeah, I think that on top of, like you were saying, the serialization of everything, cataloging, that there's a whole different level of tracking that happens. The logistics of it are a thing of their own, 100%.
And when you first came into the life sciences industry, was it a bit of an eye-opener? Were you going, wow, okay, this is not your traditional make something, package it up, send it out the back door, or make it available for will call it a 3PL or something like that. This is so much every step in the chain, right from the point where you conceptualize a product, you assess market demand, you create product market fit, you're speaking at life science conferences so that you get your name out there, your brand out there as a well-known supplier to the life sciences space. It's a very competitive space. Big pharma manufacturers many times have their own in-house ability to create genomic sequences, et cetera. And you're trying to get your kind of foot in the door there. It feels like it's almost like a completely different world to almost any other form of B2B selling and manufacturing and distribution. And was it an eye-opener when you first started working in the life sciences space where you went, wow, okay, there's a little bit of a learning curve here I'm going to have to get up to speed on before I can even start contributing to the business?
Most definitely. I think you mentioned it in the beginning. Agency background. These are things from an agency perspective you don't typically have to deal with. I think you also mentioned industrial, shipping something like a light bulb or a toilet or whatever it is. I actually started off very early on in my career with HD Supply. So I'm familiar with that also. And yeah, coming into this world, complete shocker. Exactly. For that reason. Because it's... There's also the complexities of just making sure you have everything you need to manufacture the parts. And you're dealing a lot of the time with components that are more difficult to get than, say, a part that's manufactured in China, right? If it's a biological component and wherever that biological component comes from is unavailable or having some sort of issue, yeah, that could really set things back. And just given the complexity in the sales cycle, complexity in the purchase cycle, and having to ship everything out. Yeah, it's just it's a whole different level of issues that could come up along the way. Yeah, coming into this, absolutely.
And you have
different
the additional, I guess you have the additional regulatory challenges. And I've consulted to a few businesses that worked not only in the life sciences space, but in other regulated industries, whether that's firearms, cannabis, alcohol. There's lots of regulated industries, even supplements. I used to work inside of a supplement supplier brand when I was living down in New Zealand, and even the supplements space is massively regulated. And so there are certain payment gateways that won't allow you to sell through them unless you can show that you're authorized to sell these products. You've got some practitioner only type products that can only be sold via a practitioner who's had a consult with the ultimate user of those products. We've got cannabis and gateways, even though in many states and in many locales, cannabis products are now legal. A lot of gateways won't allow you to sell through them because of the fact that the national laws around cannabis are still the most restrictive laws in the land, right? And so basically, anytime you operate within any kind of a regulated industry where there are, in some cases, state laws in place, some cases, local laws in place, some cases, federal laws in place. And then we have the unique taxation question to think about. We've got the local state taxes, we've got federal taxes, and certain industries are taxed differently depending on the types of products that you're producing and shipping. And then we have restrictions on where you can actually ship those products to. Like I know in the life sciences space, shipping products internationally is almost impossible. It's very, very difficult to ship some of these products internationally. So I guess it puts you in a certain box. That means, oh my God, whenever we're thinking about even selecting an e-commerce platform that can support all of the constraints that we need, and maybe even, for example, selecting the right ERP or selecting the right PIM system that can support the complexity of the variants that we have to run. From the tech selection and the customer experience back, it all gets orders of magnitude more complex in the considerations you have to think about, and even down to the marketing you can do, because there's certain ways you can market some of these products, and there's real strict rules. If you're operating in a regulated environment, there's even the things you can say about your own products are heavily regulated, right?
Yes, absolutely. Having, of course, being at Illumina currently, and having been at a German biotech company most recently, Miltenyi Biotech, actually. Yeah, these are international companies shipping to, in many cases, 50 plus countries, going through distributors for a lot more of those countries. The level of complexity just adds up the more places you are doing business. And I think with that, there's different regulations in each place, to your point. There's different ways that you have to get to the products, to the customers, different checks, different examinations that have to happen upon shipping them across borders. Yeah, there's a reason there's such a large team that handles the operations side, and of course the e-commerce side on the back end and setting all this up, and again, working with all the different taxation that happens and going across borders like that. And then certainly from a marketing perspective, exactly, especially as there's all these new privacy regulations coming out in countries around the world. Of course, you've got places like the EU that are, I think, most known for that. You've got Germany, which requires a double opt-in. You've got now countries, even in South America, Brazil just put something through, Turkey just put something through also that is very similar to GDPR regulations. Different states across the US are doing it now. Yeah, the state of California to start off with, we've got CPPA. So yeah, I think from a marketing perspective too, and then to make matters more, I guess, even more difficult, it's not even just what you can say as a marketer in general, it's what you can say as a life science, healthcare oriented marketer. You have things like the Sunshine Act that come into play too. You can't, if you're dealing with healthcare practitioners, with HCPs, there's a whole different set of regulations that comes into play there in terms of what you can promise, what you can claim with your products, what you can give away. Exactly. So yeah, I think coming into the space, and especially not having been in it originally, it's almost like a whole new language you have to learn, or really several different languages you have to learn, because again, it pervades all the different functions of the business.
But I guess in many respects, that automatically means a pretty high level of job security, because there's not too many people that play in this space and have the deep experience and knowledge that you have. And and it makes sense why B2B Online wants you to speak there and talk about your experiences and talk about your unique niche and vertical. It makes complete sense to me. If we think about the tech stack that you guys run to enable B2B commerce, that end-to-end, the operational component, the sales component, the marketing component, the actual transactional component. I'm guessing that you guys don't just do self-service e-commerce, that you also offer EDI sales where a buyer wants to buy at scale for basically their ERP talking to your ERP. I'm guessing you also support punch-out purchasing. So that's another thing in the B2B world that we don't have to think about. We don't have to think about that in the B2C and D2C world. We don't have to think about all these multiple digital sales channels like we do in the B2B world. And then we have B2B specific marketplaces now and life sciences marketplaces now where you have to think about selling through and complying and mapping all of your data to the way that they want to present those products to their customers in the marketplace. If we think about your tech stack and how complex that needs to be able to service your market, it's pretty intense, right? So what kind of roughly does your tech stack look like as of today to be able to fulfill all those functions?
Yeah, so a lot of places, as far as the standard e-commerce transaction that's happening directly through the website, directly through the front door, I like to call it. Yeah, in a lot of cases, you can use something more standard like an SAP to facilitate that. But to your point, a lot of the time, especially with some of the larger customers, if you're working with a UC, the UC school system, if you're working with some of these larger pharma companies like a Johnson & Johnson, they have a very specific way that across the company, they're mandated to make all their purchases. So like you were saying, there are a lot of time going through some of these B2B e-procurement oriented channels. They're setting up a hosted catalog in a lot of cases where we're generating a specific product set for them, and it's got special pricing specifically for them on a number of different products because there's a whole negotiated set of discounts for certain product types that we've gone in and set up for them. In other cases, we're doing things like punch out. Exactly. We're going through something like a Coupa, something like a Jagger, these life science specific means of going in and making purchases from exactly. That's it. And so there's a whole process of setting that up. And again, a lot of the times pulling from our ERP system and getting those things to talk to each other. And then there's also level 2 punch out in a lot of cases where it's not just them kind of logging in to a portal and seeing our products, but seeing our products alongside other companies' products as well. There's the process of going in and strategically figuring out what that's going to look like to make sure our products are competitive since they are being displayed side by side. And then, yeah, like you were saying too, a lot of times it's distribution networks, it's marketplaces, and there's a whole different set of complexities around that too. And some of the life science environments I've been in are wary about doing that sometimes too, just because it can be a point of leverage almost, right? So if you're going into a marketplace, and that becomes the primary means by which a lot of your customers, especially some of your bigger customers, are transacting. Essentially, that's a point of leverage. A lot of the time, the marketplace, of course, their business model, they're taking a certain percentage of your sales. If it's too much of your sales, a lot of the time they can turn around and say, hey, we're taking 3% today. You've got X, Y, and Z customers buying from us exclusively through this channel. We're going to need 4% now.
Yes.
So it's a kind of a sticky dance you have to do going into some of these relationships. But yeah, a lot of the time you still have to do it because there's often companies out there that'll say, that's how we buy. That's how our procurement system works. And if we're going to buy from you, that's where we want to do it.
And even selective preferred distributor partners. It might not be a marketplace, but effectively some of these distribution partners are effectively their own marketplace. And if they're the sole distributor or the primary distributor in a region or in a state or in a city or whatever it might be, they might be the preferred supplier to the local UC schools, for example. And basically you have to sell through those distributors because those buyers, they don't want to have direct relationships with every single life sciences supplier. They want to be able to buy off one distributor that aggregates all that together, keeps it in their refrigerated warehouse or whatever it is for immediate dispatch and delivery within 24 hours kind of thing for a project that's just been given a grant or whatever it might be to kick the project off. Some of these distributors carry an almost ungodly level of power in their vertical that they operate in.
Absolutely. And I think it gets even more complex when you're talking about something where that's, for example, donor dependent. And so to give you an example of that, thinking back to my time at Miltenyi, Miltenyi actually provided blood products, which were reliant on a whole network of donors that essentially had to show up reliably, donate their sample, which was then taken and used to produce whatever blood products we were selling, right? Yeah, you're then reliant not only on kind of the distribution of it and getting it out to customers and getting it to them quickly enough and getting to them right conditions, but you're reliant on people coming and making regular donations, many of which are not necessarily the most reliable pool of people to be doing that sort of thing, right? Yeah,
I was a blood donor in the United States when I was growing up because I grew up in the U.S. And my grandfather was for a period of time, for a very short period of time, I think he was in the top 3 blood donors in the country. At some point, I think by the time he was forced to stop giving blood, I think he'd given over 30 gallons of blood. I think it was 32 gallons or something like that of blood in his lifetime through his local blood bank. So yeah, it's a crazy thing. And he felt like he was trying to do good for his community, for people that were in car accidents, etc., and being able to donate that blood. And he was able to give more frequently because he gave plasma, right? So he got his red blood cells back. And so there's a lot of blood products that are based on the plasma component, the liquid part of the blood, that then is used as the biological substrate to do other things, to create other blood related products. So it's crazy, right? And we've got these network of blood banks and donation centers all around the United States, for example, that then have to be sent to a central processing facility, a vetting facility, making sure that the blood is pure, making sure that it doesn't have any issues with it, make sure it's not diseased, etc. It's crazy how this industry has been able to create these, in some cases, quite informal networks and professional businesses, because blood banks are nonprofits, but then you have other for-profit facilities that pay people to come in and give up blood products or other sperm donation, for example, and all these other for-profit businesses that have sprung up as a cottage industry around the life sciences. Like it's a really complex network of supply chains. I won't even say supply chain. It's supply chains, depending on the type of component that you're trying to put out into the market.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that you pluralized that there, because I think the singular there, the supply chain doesn't even do it justice, right? And then to introduce the complication we were talking about before too, different countries have different regulations around that. Whereas in somewhere like the United States, it's perfectly legal to pay people to come in and donate something like blood. Across most of Europe, it isn't. It's entirely donation based. It has to be 100% nonprofit, right? So they're reliant on a willing, for the greater good, group of people coming in and doing this on a regular basis. And it's not even like we can take samples from the United States and ship them out there, because in a lot of cases, legal restrictions don't allow for that, right? It means to some stuff.
Wow. And when you think about the future of life sciences and B2B commerce, what do you see anything from a regulatory perspective, or do you see the world of B2B commerce and life sciences getting easier or harder moving forward? Do you see the legislation catching up with the speed of innovation in the life sciences space, or do you see it actually falling further behind? Because it feels legislation in many instances is antiquated. It doesn't really take into account the speed of the market. It doesn't take into account the need for businesses to be able to create new products quickly, get them tested, get them into market quickly, be able to sell them through digital channels super efficiently with a friction. Do you think that the legislative industrial complex, for lack of a better term, do you think that it really understands life sciences, and do you think it's going to get better at keeping up with the speed of life sciences, or do you continue to see challenges around the legislative space in your industry?
No, I would say overall, I anticipate things staying the same. I wouldn't say they're necessarily going to get better or worse. And I think this has been a highly regulated industry for a long time. I think certainly the speed of innovation, particularly at high resource organizations, is increasing. And so I think it's going to be particularly problematic for organizations that are innovating faster and faster because they're going to have more to put forward, more things that they would like to do, would like to put through and get to the market faster. And they're still going to be met with the same bureaucratic red tape and sort of hoops that they have to jump through to get there that they have been for the past essentially 50 years. There just isn't a whole lot of, I don't see the legislation and the process by which something is tested, reviewed, and brought to market really changing or keeping up with the speed of the market. So overall, to answer that question, I would say I do see it getting more difficult. I think technologically, we might see some new platforms, some new means of review that may expedite the process a bit, but I don't think it's going to keep up with the pace of innovation and I guess the increase in the pace of innovation that we're seeing right now.
And what would be your advice? Because I have
Makes
consulted to some smaller life sciences businesses, and they still do things like the rest of the B2B world. They kind of do most things via spreadsheet. They have their price list via spreadsheet. They've got all the variants of their products via spreadsheet. They send those out. Maybe they got Salesforce internally, but they don't offer self-service e-commerce today. Maybe they don't offer punch out today. Maybe the only thing they offer is EDI, and that's where it stops because the very, very largest buying cohort requires them to have EDI, and so they put in EDI kind of at the point of a gun, so to speak. They didn't really want to do it, but they had no choice. Maybe they're using a lot of these businesses. It's crazy because when I go in to consult to them, sometimes they're still using Xero or they're using QuickBooks in their back office. They don't have a formal ERP, and they're maybe working very closely with a sensitive substance 3PL that is used to having to deal with the logistics side of their business. So they're not really having to think about the logistics side of their business. And so as they expand and as they grow and as they want to target these bigger and bigger market opportunities, they have no choice but to modernize their business. They have no choice but to move to a more heavy-duty ERP, maybe something like a NetSuite or D365 or something like that. They have no choice but to think about, okay, do I need a punch-out middleware platform like TradeCentric or Greenwood or something like that can help me connect to all these distributors' e-procurement platforms and maybe even my end buyers' e-procurement platforms so that I can even get a chance to have a seat at the table to possibly sell to them? What would be your advice if they're a small, homegrown, independent life sciences business let's say they're doing, let's say they're doing less than $20 million a year currently, but they don't kind of know where to start to upgrade their technology stack and their processes to start playing with the bigger end of town. What would be your advice to them as that stepping stone process that will allow them to get there?
Sure, definitely. First off, you'd be amazed at some of the antiquated systems and antiquated processes I've seen by which things in ERP are updated, even in mid-sized to larger companies. So the first thing I would say is, if you feel like you're behind, you'd be surprised.
You might not be. You might not be as behind as you think you are.
Right. You might not be. That's the thing. Exactly. The second thing I would say is I would advise again, to your point, maybe under $20 million business out there, plan for what you're going to be doing in the next 5 years and start setting it up today. And the reason that I say that is because in virtually every environment I've been in where we've tried to modernize the process, where we've tried to bring in bigger, better software, there's a timeline to do that. And that timeline, is generally longer to begin with. But maybe it's going to take us a year to get a new system in place. And then, of course, we have to train teams on how to work with it. We have to hire the right people to manage it, to administrate it. And then inevitably, things get delayed. Things happen along the way. Maybe you don't have the right people in place. Maybe as you're digging through the system that has gotten you to the point where you are right now, you uncover things that are going to be even more challenging than you previously thought. So I would say, plan for it to take at least twice as long as you think it's going to in the beginning.
And probably cost twice as much as you think as well.
That's probably the biggest, and it costs twice as much as you think. Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because some of these life sciences businesses, they have the most modern lab equipment They have the most modern processes. They have the most modern safety protocols. They have the most modern shipping process in terms of safety and reliability and biosecurity and compliance. Like, they comply with all the laws. They'll spend millions and millions of dollars on equipment and kitting out labs and everything else. But then when you look behind the scenes, they don't give the same care, love, and attention to their operational systems and their sales technology as they do to their biotechnology systems. And it just seems so incongruent. It's like, how can you run the latest lab equipment? You spent $5 million for this, I don't know, this microscope over here or something, and then you're running Xero, or you're running QuickBooks to manage your business, or you're running systems that are not integrated. Maybe you have a standalone instance of Salesforce or HubSpot that your sales team uses, but that doesn't talk to your transactional systems, and so they got to come back into the office and they got to manually key orders into a system for fulfillment, or they got to talk to the lab manager. Can we actually get this product out within the next 2 weeks? It just seems like there's such a disconnect between how modern the lab side of the business might be, or the functional capability in terms of producing new products and researching new products. The research side of the business might be absolutely cutting edge, but then the software running the operational and transactional side of the business could be, it seems like it's an afterthought. And that feels like a massive disconnect in these businesses.
100%. Exactly. And at a company that will not be named, I came in at one point and they actually didn't have a dedicated e-commerce platform. So in a lot of cases, customers were either having to go through dedicated e-procurement systems, which was fine, or they were having to go online, essentially put together a list of what they wanted to order and call it in. And this is a company that's producing multi-million-dollar equipment. They have state-of-the-art instruments, state-of-the-art consumables, antibodies, cytokines, all these things produced to, in many cases, a clinical level, an IVD level. But again, on the software side, they're probably 10 years behind. So I think that's again, it's more common in this space that you might think it is. And yeah, I think finally now, again, from what I've seen over the course of the past 5 years or so, a lot of these legacy companies that are primarily product driven, in many cases founder operated and still run by people with the science background, are starting to realize that they have to bring in people with e-commerce, digital specific backgrounds to modernize, because at the end of the day, we're in a place now where I think everybody expects Amazon. Everybody expects a user-friendly experience where they're able to go in, find what they're looking for easily, but yeah, to transact in a way that is native and effectively seamless to them. So we're getting there, slowly but surely.
Love it. And what's next for you that's high on your priority list at Illumina, that you say, okay, here's some digital capabilities that we don't yet have, that I think we should have, and that we want to have, and we need to have if we want to continue to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. Here's an offering that I think we need to be bringing to market that you don't yet do, that either your customers are asking for, or you just have identified a gap where you say, hey, look, I think we can exploit this, and I think it's going to put our business ahead of the competition even further, and it's going to build a moat around our business that protects us from some of our competitors. What is like high on your priority list, high on your radar, that you're going, yep, these are things that we really need to nail?
Sure, definitely. There's a full-scale redesign of the website happening right now, and there's so many different components to that, and sort of sections of the website that are being updated and brought into the way that we think a user would actually want to see things laid out. And a lot of it is the presentation of information and the navigation and the simplicity of getting to what they're looking for. So there's a restructuring of the whole architecture happening first and foremost. But another part of that too, there's definitely a refinement of the search function going. You don't want to, I've seen this at a few different places I've been. You don't want a situation of where people are having to Google your products to get to them, right? Where it's easier for them to go through an external search engine to find what they're looking for, rather than being able to use yours internally. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big initiative. On top of that, yeah, I think we're just looking to expand upon the capabilities of My Illumina. This is the logged in place where customers have access to not only the ability to go in and place an order, but also look back at all their order history, okay, personalized product recommendations, not even just as part of the checkout process, but across the entirety of the website. So we're trying to make it much more focused on them, their business, based on their purchase data, feeding that all back into the back end and making it so that the experience they have is for them, for their organization and the work that they're doing.
Love that. Very ambitious, but super important in today's world because, like you said, B2B buyers, in latest data from DC360 says over 60% of modern B2B buyers are millennials. So the reality is their expectation, it's not your granddaddy's expectations anymore on the buy side. They have super high expectations as buyers that you're going to make their life easy and you're going to make it seamless and you're going to make it efficient for them because they're not buying for pleasure. They're buying for business and they're buying as part of their day job. They're doing procurement as part of their day job. They want to get in, get what they need, and get the hell out as fast as they possibly can with a minimum of fuss, maximum amount of payment methods that are relevant to them, ACH, on account, etc. They want to be able to, whether that's insurance or grant provided or whatever it might be, they want to have all that seamlessly at their fingertips. They want to see what their credit limit is. They want to see all those things. And they want to be able to do that fast. If they need to return products, if they need to make a CPQ request, a quote request for a specific product, they want to be able to do that seamlessly and digitally, find out where that is. Once an item ships, they want to be able to track that right to their lab door. And so these expectations have been set in the B2C and D2C world, and those have carried over and bled over into the B2B world. It's an ambitious project. What technology layer are you using on the front end? Are you using Adobe? Are you using Salesforce on the front end? What are you using as your primary commerce technology?
Yes, we've got AEM on the front end.
Okay, so you got AEM. So you're effectively running a headless
Yep.
front end using AEM as the experience layer.
Exactly. That's right.
Love it. Love
Yep.
it. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, we've got AEM. Yep.
Look, this is it's been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a lot from you and from your experience that's very unique and it's very vertical specific, which is in that life science space. There's some real challenges there, but massive opportunities there. And I think anybody that chooses to specialize in digital within the life sciences space has probably got a pretty good career opportunity ahead of them because there are so few people that not only do you need to specialize in B2B more holistically, but then you need to specialize in all the granular challenges and opportunities that exist within the life sciences space. It is a really niche space to be able to drill down into and become an expert in. So any of you out there that are looking for a job, maybe, I don't know if you're hiring, Evihn, but I would say that if you're out there and you're looking for your next career step, life sciences might be a great opportunity for you if you're a digital person.
Yeah, to really speak to that, once you enter this space, I think having been on the other end of it and been on the hiring side, of course, we're almost exclusively looking for people that have some level of life science background for those exact reasons. Again, and there's I think when a lot of people look at the life science industry in general, they have this perception that everybody within the industry has some sort of science background. And there is an entire suite there's several departments within the company in which the majority of people that you'll work with don't have a formal science education necessarily. They don't have the PhD. Again, they've just learned things being within the space, working hands-on to operate the business. And yeah, once you have that experience, to your point, there's definitely a level of job security that comes along with it. Yeah, like you said, to anybody listening, as someone that actually didn't intend to end up in this space originally, but is very glad he did, highly recommend it for that reason.
Love it. Love it. Now, listen, as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you, let you ask me one question. Any question you like, could be personal or professional. So, Mr. Evihn VASZILY from Illumina, what is your question for me today?
So if you were today as let's say a person starting off in their career to go into any of the B2B industries that you are familiar with, which one would you choose and why?
That's a great question. I'd actually take this in a slightly different direction. I think, especially if you are at the start of your career, I think going and working inside an agency is possibly the best thing you can do. Most people can't do agency work forever because it's massively stressful. You do incredible hours. You're customer facing. You're working across 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 accounts, usually at the same time. It's hard. I'm not going to say agency life is easy, but my God, the amount of compressed learning you can get in a very short period of time it just pays dividends. So even if you only do agency side work for 2 to 5 years or 2 to 10 years or 2 to 8 years, I think that the amount of learning that I did, not only working agency side, but also owning and building agencies, those were turning points. If I look back across my career, those were turning points in my career because of the sheer volume of learning that I did in that really short, that would be my recommendation, especially if you don't know necessarily which area of e-com you want to go into, whether you want to focus on maybe the more the marketing side, maybe the more the tech side, maybe the operational side. If you don't really know exactly which area is going to float your boat, or project management or account management, or there's something for everyone, whether you're a creative, whether you're more technical, there's something for everyone in our industry. And so I think you need to taste as many things as you can as early in your career as you can, so that you can figure out what is the thing that's going to light your fire that you're going to actually be able to do for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I think agency work is the fastest way to come to that conclusion. That's been my experience. And in fact, many of my friends in the industry, they would agree with that. They'd say that they cut their teeth in the agency world. And man, if you can handle agency life, you can handle brand side work. It becomes almost a cakewalk in comparison.
I could not agree with that more. I would have given exactly the same answer if somebody asked me that question. Again, as someone that went through the same experience, like you said, it's about trying not only different roles, getting your hands wet with different parts of the business, but even figuring out what industry you want to work in, what sorts of companies you want to work with, what size company you want to work with. It's like a great sampler platter that allows you to get your hands into a number of different businesses and peek under the hood a bit, much more so than even something like shadowing, even trying different things earlier on in your education, you could ever do, because you're there in a hands-on capacity, and you can see how things are working from the inside out and figure out, hey, is this the kind of environment and the kind of work that I actually want to be doing firsthand? And to your point, it's extremely grueling. I think there's a reason that if you look into a lot of agency environments, they definitely do younger. I think that the people that are veterans in the space, are kudos to them. That's hard to do long term, but it's 100% worth it, especially early on like that. So could not agree more.
Love it. Love it. Now, if people want to get a hold of you and chat all things e-com, life sciences, B2B, etc., I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and to the Illumina website in the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you and have a yarn?
Yeah, so I'd say generally speaking, the best way is going to be reaching out via LinkedIn. That's your best bet.
Absolutely love it. Evihn, it's been a fabulous conversation. I've learned a lot. It's been seriously entertaining as well, regaling me with stories from the trenches of the industry. So I really appreciate it. I can't wait to meet you in person for the very first time at B2B Online Florida. I really appreciate you spending the time with me today. Thank you so much. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.